guys, what's up? So today I'm going to show you how to get to the quadratic equation, right? And I'm going to cover everything. So this should, even if you're completely new to this, you should be able to understand, okay? So let's start off by saying that, writing it down, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Let's move the c to the other side. So let's subtract c from both equations, and we have ax squared plus bx must be equal to negative c. Now, let's do something really cool. Let's divide these two equations by a, and then multiply the end result by a. Because we're just dividing by a and multiplying by a, which is 1. So now we have a times x squared plus b over ax equals negative c. And you might wonder, why did we do this, right? And here's your answer, pretty much. When you have something like this, m plus a, actually let's use, let's just use m plus a. If we have m plus a squared, and this isn't part of this equation, right? So we have m plus a squared, right? We can multiply that out. We can say m plus a times m plus a, which equals m squared plus ma plus am plus a squared. And now let's add them both together, and we have m squared plus 2ma plus a squared, right? So we just expanded that bracket, and we got that, right? So what we can now do is, well, let's try making this right here really similar to that one. And if we do that, then we can turn this into a root, like something that is raised to the power of 2. So then we can just take the square root and, figure it out, right? So we see that there's a 2 here, and then there's an ma. So maybe there's just a 2, but it's just in the denominator. Maybe it's multiplied by 2 and then divided by 2. See how there's a 2 here? So to get rid of that 2, we would just have to divide it by 2. So let's just divide this part by 2, right? So now we have this, a x squared plus b over 2a multiplied by x multiplied by 2 equals negative c. And we didn't change anything. This is still the exact same, hold on. I feel like this is on a slant, but whatever. This is still the exact same, right? So now what we can do is, well, to make this even more similar to this, let's just square a. So let's see what is m and what is a in this equation. Well, as we can tell, m is x because x is squared, right? That means a is b over 2a, right? So if it's b over 2a, then let's just write down this equation using this part, right? So we'll add another term to it. We'll say x squared plus b over 2a times x times 2 plus b squared over 4a squared multiplied by a must be equal to negative c. And since we added this term, we must also add that to the other side. And what we added is we pretty much multiplied by a and added to the other side, right? Which means we have b squared over 4a, right? And now what we can do is we can compact this thing, right? So this looks large, right? But what we can do is we can just like make it equal x plus b over 2a squared, right? That's exactly what this part is. So let's just do that, right? So now we have x plus b over 2a squared equals negative c. And let's just divide both sides by a. So negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared. Okay, now from here, I'm pretty sure all of you guys know how to do this. Now we simply, solve it like a normal algebraic thing, normal algebra problem. We just take the square root, right, and we take the square root of both sides and subtract it by b over 2a, right? So let's do it right now. So now we know that x plus b over 2a must be equal to the square root of, okay, well, let's try getting like denominators. Actually, you know what? Let's do that later. I feel like we don't want to overcomplicate stuff right now. So, b squared over 4a squared. And what we can now do is we can subtract b over 2a in both sides because we want to isolate x, right? And we have x. Can you guys see that? Okay. So now we have x is equal to the square root of negative c over a plus b squared over 4a squared, subtract b over 2a. And where did the subtraction sign come from? Well, we pretty much subtracted, b over 2a by both of the equations, right? And this is it. This is pretty much your formula. If you were to plug this into a calculator, you would get your value for x, right? But now, to make it look like the ones showed online, we can just, simplify it a little, right? And you know what? Let's do the simplifying over in this box. Right? So let's start off, let's start off with this part. So we have this equation right here. We have that square root of a negative c plus b squared over 4a squared, and that's also over a, subtract b over 2. So this is what we have, right? So to simplify, let's try getting like terms, right? So let's try getting the denominator to be the same. Oh, and by the way, if you're asking where the plus and minus come from, the square root of any number can be a positive or a negative, except for, I don't know, an imaginary number, like any real number, right? So like the square root of 4 can be negative 2 or 2. I don't even know if you guys can see that, but no, you can't. But okay, see, that's what we have. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so now to get the denominators to be the same, we can just multiply the top part and the bottom part by 4a, right? So now we have negative c times 4a over, now they both have the same denominator, so we can just say 4a squared, take the square root of that, and subtract it by b over 2a. Okay, and now let's make, so since we have a negative plus a positive, we can just make that a positive subtracted by this, or we can say positive plus the negative, right? So now we can just switch them up, we can just switch them around, and we can say that this is equal to the square root of b squared subtract 4ac, right? And the 4ac is the exact same as c4a, right? So over 4a squared subtracted by b over 2a. Well, what else we can do is, if we look down here, when you take the square root of two numbers when they're multiplied, it's going to be equal to the square root. So let's do it right here. Square root of m times a is equal to the square root of m times the square root of a, as you guys know. So we'll take the square root of the top and take the square root of the bottom. So the square root of the bottom is going to be 2a, right? So 2a times 2a becomes 4a squared. So now we have the square root of b squared subtract 4ac over 2a. They both have the same denominator, so we can just write it over the same denominator, subtracted by b. And this is pretty much it. But what we can do is, to make it even more like what it looks like online, we can just say negative b plus or minus this square root, right? So our final equation comes down to this. We'll switch around again like we did over there. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared subtract 4ac over 2a. And we can say x is equal to that, and that's our answer right there. And you can do whatever you want, okay? So that's how you get to the answer, and I hope all of you guys understood this.